He was standing on the side of the road. No car, no lights, no movement. I almost didn't stop. But when I passed him, he slowly turned his head. And hours later, I saw the same figure again, over 200 miles away. Still waiting, still watching. Hello, little ravens. Tonight, another account has been added to the archive. These are documented first-person testimonies from those who encountered something they still can't explain. If you're drawn to realistic horror, subscribe and listen carefully. Roadside encounters are usually brief. A silhouette, a stranger asking for help, someone who disappears the moment you look away. But sometimes, the encounter doesn't end when you drive away. Sometimes, whatever you saw on the side of the road was never trying to get help. It was waiting. I drive long distances for work, mostly overnight routes between smaller towns where traffic gets thin after midnight. That night, I was on a 2-lane highway somewhere between Arizona and New Mexico. No streetlights, no houses, just desert and reflective mile markers flashing in my headlights. It was around 2:13 a.m. when I saw him. He was standing just past mile marker 87, a few feet off the shoulder, not waving, not moving, just standing there, facing the road. At first, I thought he was a stranded driver, but there was no car, no hazard lights, no flashlight, nothing behind him except darkness stretching for miles. I slowed down instinctively. As I got closer, I noticed something that felt wrong. He wasn't looking at oncoming traffic. He was looking straight ahead, toward the direction I was coming from, like he had been waiting for my headlights specifically. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter. People don't just stand on highways in the middle of nowhere at 2 a.m. without a reason. When I passed him, he didn't step forward, didn't wave, didn't react. But right as my truck went by, he slowly turned his head and followed me with his eyes. Not a quick glance, a slow, deliberate movement. I checked my mirrors immediately. He was still standing there, perfectly still, until my taillights faded into the distance. I told myself not to overthink it. Probably a hitchhiker, maybe someone whose car broke down further back. I even considered turning around, but the idea of stopping on an empty highway at night didn't sit right with me. So I kept driving. About 40 minutes later, I stopped at a gas station just outside a small town. One of those quiet 24-hour places with a single pump light buzzing overhead. I grabbed a coffee, used the restroom, and got back on the road. By then, it was close to 3:10 a.m. The highway curved for several miles after the town, cutting through a stretch of open desert. No exits, no buildings, just long, empty road. And then I saw him again, standing on the shoulder, a few feet off the asphalt, completely still. My headlights washed over him slowly as I approached. Same posture, same stance, same dark clothing. And then I saw the mile marker 142. I felt my stomach drop. That was over 50 miles from where I first saw him. There was no possible way he could have walked that distance in under an hour. And there were no side roads connecting those stretches of highway, just empty desert. This time, I didn't slow down. I kept my speed steady and stared straight ahead, pretending I hadn't noticed him. But as my truck passed, he turned his head again, slowly, precisely, tracking me the exact same way. My hands were shaking now. I checked my mirrors again. He wasn't getting smaller in the distance, like a normal person would. He just disappeared into the darkness the moment my headlights were no longer directly on him. No walking away, no shifting position, just gone. I drove in complete silence for the next hour. No music, no radio, just the sound of tires on asphalt. At around 4:02 a.m., I crossed into another county line and merged onto a different highway, a wider road, more reflective signs, and the occasional passing truck. I finally started to calm down, until I saw a familiar silhouette ahead, standing near the guardrail. Not moving, not signaling, just waiting. And before my brain could even process it, my headlights illuminated the sign beside him, mile marker 203. I didn't slow down. I didn't look directly at him. I just kept driving and stared forward, heart pounding, so hard I could hear it over the engine. But in my peripheral vision, I saw the head turn, not toward the road, toward me. Like he knew it was the same driver passing again. I didn't stop for the rest of the trip, didn't pull over, didn't take breaks, didn't even check my mirrors after that. When I finally got home that morning, I parked in my driveway and just sat there for a few minutes in silence, trying to convince myself I was tired, that my mind was playing tricks on me, that maybe it was 3 different people who just happened to stand the exact same way on 3 different highways. But what still bothers me is something I realized days later. I checked my dashcam footage. At mile marker 87, the camera clearly shows the roadside. Empty shoulder, empty desert. No one standing there at all. But in the reflection of my passenger side mirror, you can see the outline of a man, standing exactly where I remember him being. What makes this account unsettling isn't just the repetition, it's the behavior. The figure never asked for help, never stepped into the road, never reacted with urgency. It simply watched. Appearing dozens of miles apart in under an hour is already difficult to explain. Fatigue can distort perception once, but consistency across multiple locations is harder to dismiss. And then there's the dashcam detail. Nothing visible on the roadside, but something present in the mirror. If that's accurate, the implication isn't just that someone was standing there. It's that whatever it was only visible from certain angles. I've been driving freight long enough to know one rule: don't pick up strangers, especially not at night, especially not on rural highways. But that night, I almost broke it. It was late November, cold enough that the air looked metallic under the headlights. I was hauling a refrigerated load through a stretch of highway in northern Pennsylvania. Long forested areas, very few exits, barely any cell service. Around 1:40 a.m., I saw someone walking along the shoulder. Not standing, walking, slow, steady pace, head slightly down, no reflective gear, no backpack, just a dark jacket and jeans. That alone was unusual. There's nowhere to walk to out there. The nearest town was at least 10 miles back. As I passed him, he turned and looked directly at my truck, and he raised his thumb. I kept going. About 30 seconds later, I started feeling uneasy. Not because he looked threatening. He didn't. He looked normal, mid-30s maybe, clean clothes, no obvious distress. But the temperature outside was below freezing. If his car had broken down, it wasn't anywhere in sight. And there are stretches of that road where no one drives for 15, 20 minutes at a time. I told myself I wasn't responsible, but I slowed down anyway. About a mile ahead, there was a wide gravel turnout used occasionally for weight checks. I pulled in and stopped, left my headlights on. Figured if he was really hitchhiking, he'd catch up in a few minutes. I watched my side mirror. The road behind me was empty, just darkness and tree lines. 2 minutes passed, 3. No sign of him walking up the shoulder. That didn't make sense. He hadn't looked injured. Even at a slow pace, he should have been visible by then, at least as a silhouette under my taillights. I leaned forward, squinting through the side mirror. Nothing. After about 5 minutes, I started thinking maybe I'd misjudged the distance. Maybe he was further back than I thought. So I pulled back onto the highway and drove slowly along the shoulder. 1/2 mile. 1 mile. Nothing. No footprints in the thin frost along the gravel edge. No figure walking. No broken down vehicle. No side roads. Just empty highway and trees. I felt that familiar shift in my stomach, the one that tells you something doesn't add up. I kept driving. About 15 minutes later, I approached a rest stop, one of those small ones with 2 vending machines and dim parking lot lights. I wasn't planning to stop, but I slowed down anyway, scanning the entrance. And that's when I saw him again. Standing under one of the parking lot lights, perfectly still, facing the highway, not walking anymore, not hitchhiking, just standing there. The light above him flickered slightly in the cold wind. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't pacing. He was staring directly toward the road, toward oncoming traffic. I checked the distance in my head. There was no way he could have reached that rest stop before me. Even if he'd started running the moment I passed him, he wouldn't have had time. And I hadn't seen him on the shoulder when I drove back. As my truck rolled past the rest stop entrance, I turned my head slightly to get a clearer look. And for a second, just a second, I was certain of something. He wasn't watching the highway. He was watching my truck specifically, tracking it. I didn't stop, didn't slow down, just kept driving. About 20 miles later, I convinced myself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe there were 2 different men walking the highway that night. Maybe I missed a connecting trail. Maybe I just didn't see him the second time. But here's what unsettled me days later. When I reviewed my dashcam footage, the first sighting was clear. Him walking, raising his thumb. But when I scrubbed it forward to the turnout where I had waited, there was no one behind my truck. No approaching figure. No distant silhouette on the shoulder. Just an empty road the entire time I was parked. And at the rest stop, the camera shows the parking lot, the light pole, the vending machine glow, the empty concrete. No one standing there at all. But right before my truck passes the entrance, there's a brief flicker in the side mirror, like something dark moving just outside the edge of the frame. I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore, not because I'm afraid of people, but because I'm not sure that night was about giving someone a ride. It felt more like something wanted to see if I would stop. What makes this encounter disturbing isn't just that the hitchhiker vanished. It's the sequence of events. He was first seen clearly, then reappeared ahead without any plausible way of getting there, and finally left behind physical signs, wet footprints, suggesting he was never purely imagined. That detail shifts the story from simple misperception to something harder to rationalize. In many roadside testimonies, the fear doesn't come from what is seen, but from the gaps in logic between sightings. And those gaps are often where the experience becomes truly unsettling. I wasn't supposed to be on that road. My GPS had rerouted me around construction, somewhere outside Flagstaff, sending me down a 2-lane highway that felt older than the map itself. No streetlights, no gas stations, just long stretches of asphalt and low desert brush reflecting my headlights in dull silver flashes. It was close to 2:10 a.m. I remember the time specifically because I had just checked my dashboard clock when I saw something on the right shoulder. A payphone, not a booth. Just the metal stand, kind, faded, leaning slightly. Next to what looked like the remains of an old pull-off area, cracked pavement, half swallowed by sand. And the receiver was hanging, swinging, very slowly. I passed it at about 55 miles per hour and didn't think much of it at first. Just one of those abandoned roadside relics you occasionally see in older highways. But then, about 10 seconds later, my phone rang. No caller ID, just unknown. I almost didn't answer, but the timing bothered me enough that I tapped the steering wheel button and put it on speaker. I didn't say hello, I just listened, and I could hear. Wind, not loud, not rushing, just a soft, hollow wind sound, like air moving through something open. Then faintly, metal creaking, a slow rhythmic creak, exactly like something lightly swinging I looked at my rearview mirror. The road behind me was completely empty. No headlights. No cars. No structures. The call stayed connected for maybe 7 seconds. Then it ended on its own. No beep. No disconnect tone. Just silence. I checked my call log immediately. There was no incoming call recorded. Nothing. At that point, I told myself it was probably a glitch. Bluetooth issue. Signal bounce. Something explainable. That explanation lasted for about 3 minutes. Because that's when I saw the same payphone again. Up ahead, on the right shoulder. Receiver still hanging. Still gently moving. And the cracked pull-off area looked identical. Same broken curb. Same tilted signpost behind it. I slowed down without meaning to. There was no possible loop in that stretch of road. I had been driving straight the entire time. No turns. No intersections. No exits. Just one road. I drove past it a second time, slower now, around 35 miles per hour, and this time my headlights fully illuminated the base of the payphone. The cord was stretched tight, as if the receiver had been lifted recently. Not cut, not broken, lifted, and then my car radio turned on. By itself, static first, then a burst of audio that lasted less than a second. It sounded like a voice mid-sentence, already speaking before the signal cut in. You passed it already. Then the radio went silent again. Not static, silent. I didn't touch the dial, didn't press any buttons. I just kept driving. At 2:21 a.m., my phone rang again. Same, unknown. This time I didn't answer, but I watched the screen, and as it rang, my headlights caught something far ahead on the road shoulder. A vertical shape, thin, stationary, right where a third pull-off area would logically be. The call stopped the exact moment I got close enough to see clearly. There was no person, no sign, no structure, just empty asphalt and sand. I checked my rearview mirror one last time as I passed the spot, and for a brief second, no more than that, I thought I saw a small reflective glint far behind me on the roadside, like metal catching light, swinging slightly. When I finally reached a gas station about 40 minutes later, I checked my phone logs again. Still no record of any incoming calls. But my Bluetooth history showed 2 audio connections during that drive, both labeled as public line. I've driven that same highway twice since then, during daylight. There is no payphone anywhere along that route. Not abandoned, not removed, not even the cracked pull-off area I clearly remember passing twice. And I've never received another call labeled public line. But sometimes, late at night, when my phone loses signal on long roads, it briefly lights up like it's receiving a call. No number, no vibration, just the screen waking up for a few seconds, then going dark again. Some encounters don't escalate. They repeat, quietly. A fixed object appearing where it shouldn't, a call with no record, a voice already mid-sentence. These details suggest something less like a haunting and more like a pattern glitch in perception or reality. What's unsettling isn't the payphone itself. It's the implication that something knew he had already passed it and expected him to notice. I wasn't planning to stop. It was a long rural stretch between 2 service towns in Arizona. The kind of road where your GPS shows nothing but a thin gray line for miles. No houses, no gas stations, no exits. Just desert, guardrails, and darkness swallowing the edges of the headlights. Around 1:40 a.m., I saw hazard lights ahead. A car was parked on the shoulder, angled slightly toward the road. Old sedan. Engine off. Hazards blinking at a slow, steady rhythm. On a road that empty, that late, you notice things like that immediately. I slowed down as I approached. Not out of kindness at first, more out of caution. People fake breakdowns sometimes. It happens. As I got closer, I noticed something off. No silhouette in the driver's seat, no movement inside, and the interior light was on. The driver's door was closed. I passed the car, and that should have been the end of it. But in my rearview mirror, I saw something that made me ease off the gas. The hazard lights stopped blinking. Not gradually, not fading, just off. Completely dark. I looked back at the road ahead, then checked the mirror again. Now the hazards were blinking again. Perfectly normal. Same rhythm as before. That didn't make sense. I hadn't seen anyone get back inside. There were no other cars. And I definitely didn't hear a door. I drove another half-mile. And then I did something I usually never do on isolated roads at night. I turned around. Not fast, not dramatic. Just a slow, wide U-turn when the road allowed it. When I drove back, the car was still there. Same position. Same blinking hazards. Same interior light on. I pulled over about 20 meters behind it, keeping my headlights on. I didn't get out immediately. Instead, I honked once. Short. Controlled. No reaction. No movement inside. No door opening. Nothing. I watched for maybe 30 seconds. Then I stepped out. The desert was silent in that heavy, almost pressurized way. No wind, no insects, no distant traffic. Just the ticking of my cooling engine and the click-click of those hazard lights. I approached the driver's side slowly. The interior light was definitely on, but the seat was empty. Keys were in the ignition. Seatbelt unfastened. Phone on the passenger seat. Screen dark. I remember thinking, they left the car running earlier and walked off. Except the engine wasn't warm anymore, and the hood felt cold, which meant the car hadn't been running recently at all. That's when the hazards stopped blinking again. Right in front of me. Click. Dark. I froze. I didn't touch the car. Didn't open the door. Didn't move. 3 seconds passed. Then the hazards started blinking again. On their own. Same steady rhythm. I stepped back instinctively and looked down the road in both directions. Empty. When I turned back to the windshield, something else changed. The interior light was off now. It hadn't dimmed gradually. It was just off. The phone on the passenger seat was gone. I know what I saw before. I'm certain of it. Black phone, face down, passenger seat. Now the seat was empty. No sound of a door. No footsteps. No passing vehicle. Just the hazards blinking like nothing had happened. I got back into my car immediately. As I closed my door and started the engine, I glanced one last time at the sedan in my side mirror. The hazard lights stopped. At the exact moment, my headlights shifted away from it. And they didn't turn back on again. Not once. I drove the remaining 70 miles without music, without stopping, and without checking my mirrors more than necessary. The next morning, I mentioned the car to a clerk at the gas station near the town I was heading to. He asked where exactly I saw it. I told him the mile marker. He went quiet for a second. Then he said something that still bothers me more than anything I saw that night. He said a car had been reported abandoned on that exact stretch of road 2 nights earlier. Hazards on, interior light on, driver missing. When highway patrol arrived, the battery was dead, completely dead. But the report specifically mentioned one detail. The hazard lights were still blinking when the first officer pulled up behind it. Some encounters don't involve footsteps, voices, or figures in the dark. Just systems behaving selectively. Lights that respond. Objects that change when unobserved. And the unsettling detail here isn't the abandoned car. It's the timing. Whatever was happening didn't seem random. It seemed aware of when it was being watched. And when it wasn't. And that's what makes roadside encounters different from other accounts in the archive. There's no clear pattern. No direct threat, no confirmation, just moments that shouldn't have happened. People appearing where no one should be, vehicles behaving inconsistently, and events that stop the second someone pays attention. Not louder, not violent, just wrong in subtle ways. If even one of these testimonies felt slightly off to you, that reaction is exactly why they remain unexplained. Because the most disturbing encounters aren't the ones that chase you. They're the ones that quietly refuse to make sense. Hello, little ravens. Before you leave the archive, make sure to subscribe if you're drawn to realistic, atmospheric horror based on unexplained testimonies. And if you want to continue deeper into the Night Road archive, 2 more documented cases are waiting on the final screen. Watch carefully. Some patterns only become visible when the stories are connected,